In today's video, we'll be going over how to create a design like this. And so we'll be going over some techniques, how to subdivide and create this kind of design. And so all of those steps we'll be going over right now. So thank you for being here, and let's jump right in. So to start, we're going to bring in 3 different planes. So we'll bring in a reference plane. We're going to use the YZ plane, or we can actually use the XZ plane. Now, let's bring in a plane. When we bring in the plane surface, we can use this plane to plug into that. And now we can plug in an X and Y size. So go to 25, go within the X and Y. And let's actually create a different one for the X. Cool. Now let's take this one and create 2 more copies. So we can either use series or move. You know, those are 2 that could work. So for this one, we'll use move because I'm just trying to create 3 different ones. So if I move this plane in the Y direction, this will give me a gap. So let's bring in another number here. We'll copy the slider, and I'm holding down Alt to create a copy, and this way we have 2 here. Now the reason why I didn't create another third one by using series is because I can just create a third one by using a mirror plane, using this middle geometry as our plane, and then this plane as the geometry. Cool. Now that we have these 3, they are all edited using this slider, and the gap in between is using this one. Now notice that the gap is half of the overall size, so sometimes it's okay to divide the number by 2. This way it actually does the overall size. So 31 is the overall size gap, and it creates 1 in the middle. Great. Now let's go ahead and, using these 3 planes, let's organize them. So bring in a BWrap component, or you can even use a plane component. We'll plug in this plane. Actually, let's do that. Let's bring in a plane component, and we'll create 3 different ones. All we're doing is organizing this, and I'll click on this one to space them evenly. This is going to be the last one, the middle one. And this is not necessary. You can kind of skip this step. I like to have this because I like to see the different planes here. Now, actually, it's not going to be plane. It's going to be surface. So I can have them here organized kind of vertically, and I can see 1, 2, and 3. Now, what I want to do is create a evaluate surface using this surface, and the point is going to be MD slider. Now, so it takes this plane and converts it from 0 to 1. We have to reparameterize. Now we basically picked 1 point. Now I will also take this original plane, disable preview, and what we're going to do is create 3 different points. The first point is going to be at the bottom left. The next point is going to be here somewhere up in the middle. I'll hold down shift and go to this point and do 1 more down at the bottom right. So I've technically created 3 different points that I can move around. Now the most important one is going to be this middle one, but we also have the ability to kind of lift from one side and do that kind of design. So with 3 points, let me show you how I like to organize this. Now notice that there are 3 points going into one component. We can also easily bring in a point component. This way, we can have them coming in organized. So this one holding down shift, then this one, then holding down shift, this one, and we can plug them all in like this. We can also use a relay. So those are the different ways we can do that. The reason why I like to do that is because now I can take this and I can create my design this way. We have this evaluate. We have this first one. We're going to create two more. So hold down Alt, create another one. Now hold down Alt and create another one. This one is going to be for the middle. And this surface will go down here into the surface. So we have three different designs that we can change. This one, and then lastly this one. So with all those points, as we have them all here in this output, we can create a NURBS curve or an evaluate or interpolated curve. So plug in this point to this one and do the same thing here. By plugging in those points, now we can kind of bring them back together. And so this portion of the script kind of takes care of the form, while this portion, when we bring them together, now we can take care of lofting together these three. So we can loft first one, second one holding down shift, and then the third one. Now let's play around with the geometry a little bit, because now we can kind of lift up one side. We can also lower a portion up the other side. These are the kind of forms that we can kind of create. So I think that's looking cool. And let's take our original planes, middle click, disable preview. And if middle click doesn't work, you can use spacebar. That's another trick. And we can also take those points and middle click, disable preview, and now we have the overall form. Now I have gone ahead and downloaded a few of the plugins that I had before. I will be using Lunchbox for this one, so I do recommend, if you want to get some of the features that I'm going to be going over right now, to download Lunchbox. What it does is it'll give you the ability to subdivide this surface into kind of configured patterns. So one of the ones that I like to use is the diagonal grid, but we can also use the hexagonal grid. And using this component, we can now create the wireframe, change the subdivisions in the U and B. We have two sliders here. We can decrease, let's say if in this direction we want like 8, and then this one, something like that. Okay, cool. So what we can do now is we have the inside portion, which we can create a sub D pipe. The multi-pipe, I'll plug in the structure lines right into this one, and we'll bring in a slider. So say 1.5, and I'll multiply that using a larger number. So this is the equation that I tend to use to kind of get me started, using first the strut size, and then the size of the node and the end offset. Now it's going to look really large. Now we can decrease the size of this. And I would also recommend right clicking here or double click. It'll bring you to the properties, and if you go to floating point numbers, making sure that you have like 3 decimal points, this will let you kind of get something like that. Now if you don't want it to be so kind of round and you want it to be a little bit more, you can decrease this and then increase the strut size. Also change this. And as you can see at the end here, we have that design, but we don't have the outside of this. So let's bring in a vrep edges. And plug in the lofted surface into it. And now we'll copy this and plug in our naked edges, which are going to be the outside ones, and plug those into the curve. Now, it's actually lowering it, which means that what it's doing is it's playing around with a few things here. So some of these settings here are not going to work. Let's go now to a pipe component. This will actually make it easier if we create a rounded edge or rounded end pipe and creating a slider of 1.5. We can now decrease this a little bit. We have an outer edge and an inside portion. And now let's go here to our layers. We'll delete them here. Create a new layer, call this wireframe 1 and wireframe 2. Bake this one. Now I'll bake this one. And if we take a look here in Rhino, creative mode, you see that we have a cool design, and it was straightforward. What it was is using the empty slider to move around the points that will then subdivide or create the lofted surface. Let's go here, V-Ray Interactive, play around a little bit with some of. Now sometimes you'll see that in some of these modes you can still see the wires, and that's going to be due to the display mode. If you go here, you'll see that sub D wires is on. And what I like to do is create a PVR material that is going to be the structure. Now this PVR material, I tend to just create kind of like a gray color, metalness all the way up, and then roughness 0.3, 0.2. With that, we can drag that right into both of these. Hopefully you found that interesting. I want to be going over more techniques and tutorials about how to create different forms, form finding, and that type of thing related to architecture and design. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting. Please check out the website and consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I hope to see you next time.